Alright, everyone, the Crystal Super is finally here. And that means I've got a new headset permanently stuck to my face after 2 years. So, we got a lot to talk about here. This is going to be a more of a mini review, kind of first impressions after a few days while I work on my much more thorough and comprehensive review, since the rigorous testing I want to do is going to take a lot of time, and I've only had a few days with this thing right here. However, before I get to the loads of good things about this headset, I gotta start with what may be the worst part of the headset to get something out of the way. In case you got excited with my audio right now, this is not the Crystal Super's microphone, but it is the Mod Mic Wireless that I got right here, because I like to keep my audio nice and, well, let me just switch to it real quick. As you can hear, this thing is horrid for such an expensive headset, and it's basically the Crystal Lights microphone. I was softer on that one because, well, it was a lower end headset and min-maxing visuals. But this is an expensive headset, so having a microphone like this feels inexcusable for a premium HMD in 2025. It's fine if it's not like an index quality microphone, but can we at least get a Quest quality mic here, especially after the original Crystal? Please? Alright, so with that assault on the ears out of the way, let's get to all the good things, because there's a lot, and most of the negatives aren't that bad. Let's get the big one out of the way because of the controversy it became with the last release, Field of View. Pimax is advertising some really big numbers compared to most of the industry, which if delivered on would mean we're actually starting to get some viable wide FoV options again after we, at least to my knowledge, got almost nothing even over 110 degrees since the 8KX, also from Pimax, 5 years ago. And if we look at my WIM FOV numbers, which show my subjective FOV results, the Super absolutely delivers. I have an incredibly impressive 128 horizontal and 113 vertical, both about matching or exceeding Pimax's claims, although the horizontal does have an asterisk on it we will talk about shortly. That vertical is so high, I actually think it's industry leading of the headsets which I know of that still matter, the closest being the Valve Index that's just shy of 110 with a good face shape. Someone correct me if they know one with more that's still sold, because I don't think it exists. Good times don't stop here though, as the stereo overlap for the Super is just superb, rivaling some of the best in the industry. I got 103 overlap, which about matches Pimax's claimed 105, measured by taking the horizontal values, as it's what I typically see used when discussing overlap in degrees. And this is really, really incredible. Don't look at the stereo overlap percentage, as frankly I think it's a poor metric for judging overlap on headsets with such different FOV. Case in point, here is my entire FOV for the Crystal Light overlaid with the Super's overlap. And while it doesn't quite completely fit inside, almost the whole bloody thing does. But according to WimFOV, it had a few percent higher stereo overlap, relatively speaking. But the Super's overlap in absolute degrees is worlds better and feels way better. So if somebody says this thing has bad overlap, they're wrong and not worth listening to. If we use recent 2000's HMDQ tool to grab the physically rendered values the headset tells games to render, we can see this about lines up too, and is also in line with Pimax's claims. The overlap was basically rounded up, and while I'm not overly fond of companies doing that, there's been some more notable examples in the space, like the Vive Pro 2 having 116 FOV, but being advertised as 120. Now, concerning FOV, Pimax has also advertised 138 horizontal mode. That's not available for me to test yet, unfortunately, but it should be coming very soon, as one of the reasons I am not making a full review. Now, there is a lot I could say on the main features of this headset, like the great lenses, the local dimming, the comfort, but given this is sort of a first impressions, I think it's best to play some footage of my live reactions, because it'll also give you, the viewer, a chance to see a little bit of performance with the 5090 here, as I kept a live performance overlay with FPS VR on at all times. Because the Super's 100% resolution. It's very high. I know people are worried about the demands of that, even with a 5090. But on a brief note for performance, at the medium res in the Pimax software, the Super comes in at 4680 by 4708 per eye, which is literally almost the exact same pixel count as the OG Crystal at high res. So if you're happy with the Crystal's native performance, you should probably be fine here, give or take a little bit because of the extra FoV. We'll have some videos looking at that later. Anyway, for now, let's check out some testing thoughts. Okay, here we are in Kayak VR because it is a very high-fidelity VR game that runs reasonably well. I know they talked about using 8K textures, and oh boy, it really shows on the Super here. We're running at full high resolution, which is like 6.240, or like 6,240 by like 6,280 per eye, and we're running pretty good, especially because, bear in mind, I'm recording. And this looks so nice. I'm running on all max settings with TAA going, and like the rocks, those just look beautiful on this. Yeah, and even though I'm not looking directly at the sun or anything, I can definitely feel it's noticeably brighter than the original Crystal. But on that note, looking up directly at the sky, I am seeing a little bit of Mura. It's subtle, I think. Like, it took me a second to realize it was there, which that's a good sign compared to the PSVR 2, which, oh, that was just like having a perpetual film grain filter, and boy did it ruin dark scenes. If, like, I'm looking down here, oh, it's fine. I am not seeing, like, any problems. No real Mura to speak of. It looks fine. Just when I look up, it's kind of there. So, that's a good sign. I mean, I'm going to take a closer look when I see some more environments, but already, it's probably I could live with it levels. Performance is pretty good. Trees look just gorgeous. But, let's see. Okay, hold on. Yeah, okay. When I move my head rapidly, it feels like there's some motion blur. Like, I didn't really get that on the Crystal. I move my head, yeah, Hold on. Is that because I have TAA on? Let's see. Turn that off, because, you know, TAA can cause that. No, that does not look like TAA. I'm still kind of seeing it when I do this. Alright, that's a little bit disappointing. I mean, we're dropless 90 now, but, okay. Yeah, when I turn off the TAA, there's still some shimmer here, but I've been here on the original Crystal with all sorts of settings. It is already way better than that on the shimmer, the sharpness, the general just how good everything looks. So, good first impressions. Yeah, I'm gonna have to watch for some stuff in some other scenes. The field of view, though, is great. Like, this isn't a super fast-paced game, but I already really notice it, and it's making me feel more part of the scene. And the lenses, the edge-to-edge on this is amazing, beautiful. Like, I can't show it, but I'm looking all the way far at the edges of my FOV. I don't feel like I'm really getting any degradation. No chromatic aberration really to speak of, too, except for maybe, like, the I'm actually not even sure about the CA in this environment. I'm not really seeing any aside from maybe, like, the last couple degrees. It feels better than the original Crystal, and that I already found pretty low, but I know some people found it kind of high. Huh. Yeah, this is... I'm liking it so far. I'm testing it without the top strap and with the S-Mass headphones because I just want to get the stock experience. Let's go check out some other games. Okay, we're in Automobilista 2. Like overcast weather. Yeah, I've set things very easy because I'm kind of trying to drive a bit one-handed right now so I can hold the metrics and see what I'm getting. But we're like high 60s, maybe getting close to 70 sometimes. Seems pretty good, especially because I'm recording. Yeah, this is, I don't know, 20-something cars, heavy fog weather, high settings, but with MSAA disabled. So we're running very hot. We're running some really demanding stuff here, but this is really great performance considering we're running at full res. I mean, yes, it's a 5090, but like almost 70, you know, we could drop a few things or lower the res slightly and we're doing well. So, okay, I'm gonna put this down so I can just race a little and talk, because this is very hard to do with a controller with one hand, okay? Okay, anyway. Okay, yeah, no, the motion blur thing I complained about in Kayak, let's see, is it here? It doesn't... Okay, yeah, it is much less here. I specifically turned motion blur off. I don't know if Kayak has it on by default, because I didn't see an option for it there, but this game I specifically made sure to turn it off, and yeah, moving my head, it's fine. But oh, the sense of speed with this field of view, oh, I'm already liking it. A notable increase from the Crystal. I can actually see my far view mirror over on the right there at the edge of my field of view. I wouldn't quite call it perfectly clear. It's literally like at the cutoff point, but I can see it. Like if I turn my head just a tiny little bit like this, it is perfectly able to see, I'm perfectly able to see it, and I can take a look and see cars. So yeah, edge to edge is really nice, and the racing with this, oh, I think it's going to be a treat. Oh, okay. I'm getting distracted trying to do commentary. But yeah, I love the sense of speed. I think people are going to like the field of view because that's one of the biggest things that you get out of FoV is a greater sense of speed. Okay, so we are in Skyrim with Mad God's Overhaul. I'm running... So I'm doing a test to see how well upscaling does with this thing, because right now we are at 0.50 render scale with the FSR VR Perf Kit, and then I'm using the DLAA transformer model on top of that. So this is a real test to just see how well upscaling handles versus the Crystal, and this is what I expected was going to happen. I am already seeing quite a significant difference in terms of just general detail and sharpness doing the upscaling like this, even versus when I was doing some testing with the original Crystal on 0.58, which is equivalent to the balanced upscaling while we're at performance here, and this already looks better than that. And, you know, performance, all things considered, doesn't seem that bad. This is one of the heavier, more demanding areas. And while recording, we're like kind of mid-high 60s. That's pretty good. This is on stock settings with depth culling enabled, so we maybe would want to tweak things just a little bit more, but this is completely livable. I wish we had 120 FPS so then we could do 60 reprojection comfortably. Okay, yeah, I'm still not really seeing the motion blur thing here that I complained about in Kayak, so I don't know what was up with that. Let's see, do I see Mura? Okay, yeah. We're seeing a little bit of Mura again, a little more noticeable when looking up at the sky. Again, I can totally live with it. It's not a deal breaker so far. For using what's essentially performance level upscaling with the DLAA transformer model on top of it, yes, but this looks amazingly good. Like, I can see the LOD, but I can see those look like 2D JPEGs out there that clearly need a higher LOD just because I can see so far in the distance. Like, the super high pixel density is shining incredible in these wide open areas, as is the field of view. I know, again, I'm going to be looking at this thing a little more critically once I get the time to check some stuff. This is sort of just my raw first impressions and reactions here. I'm also still using the S-Mass and the default head strap and everything to test comfort a little bit. And, I mean, it's holding up quite well. It's a bit better than the original Crystal, and, like, it doesn't feel heavy on my face, so that's a good sign. I think we'll move to the top strap, with the top strap and the DMAS and some of my comfort mods after that to give some little impressions on that. I can see the individual creases and cracks and stuff like that on the mountains over there, despite using the upscaling. Okay, so here we are in Space Engine doing a test of the local dimming. Because on the Crystal, this was an absolute worst case scenario for it. I would get blooming and flickering everywhere because of the star fields. Or after they changed the algorithm, I would get less blooming, but I would have like black crush, like kind of those stars down over there. I'd lose some detail there, and I wouldn't really get to see the detail and like the stars were there because everything was just kind of black. But this This is perfect. All the stars are visible. There's not any black crush that I can really see. The local dimming is functioning beautifully here. This went from an absolute worst case with the crystal to utterly fantastic. The only one thing I noticed, now I don't know if this is a limitation of the panel or part of the actual game. Like, you'll see in the recording what I'm about to point out. There's like this kind of circle when I'm looking directly at the Milky Way, and if this shows up in the recording, it's just part of the game. It is not a limitation of the panel and a blooming artifact. If it is not in the recording, then that means it's a blooming artifact, and I don't know which one it is yet, but that's a small, tiny little thing when, like, anywhere else, it's perfect. No issues. Beautiful. I love it. Okay, so here we are in Complex 7. This is my benchmark world for VRChat, and I've run this so many times that it haunts my nightmares, so this is good with local dimming. But there's a couple things. So, firstly, and I know this isn't going to show up on the recording, but there is, it's like with Space Engine, there is this bubble, like right here. And when I move my head around here, yeah, it's like the local dimming is trying to keep up, but it's just not working. This is probably a worst case scenario for it. I can even see the blooming artifact around my FPS VR chart right here. And yeah, this is really distracting. It's I suppose it's still better than the worst case with the original Pimax crystal, but is still quite significantly, like, drawing me out of it. I would have to do a lot more testing just to see how prevalent this is, because if this is, like, everywhere, then that's going to be a bit of a problem for the local dimming. But it worked in... What I find interesting is it worked in Space Engine with, like, a gazillion stars all around, and zero blooming, zero sign of this at all, except for maybe the Milky Way. But, like, that one little light up there, it is just miserably falling apart here. Yeah. So, but on the other positive end, on the crystal, I would lose detail here going around the place. Like, I wouldn't see those individual lines for the door there that are on, like, each flap and stuff. I wouldn't really see that until I got closer with the crystal. I wouldn't see some of the bars up in the top there, because they would just kind of get crushed in the blacks. But this, I can make them out, so you win some, you lose some, I guess. Okay, here we are in Pavlov, because I want to do a little bit of a tracking test and just see how this is. Because occlusion was a little bit of weakness on the light, and yeah, because I'm holding, this is with virtual stock disabled, I'm holding my hand still. It's not so great here. Now I'm pulling them kind of apart, so it's a little better, but oh yeah, there's some definite problems with the tracking right now. But oh, hang on. Okay, that's it. All right, let's see how the shots are, because I'm gonna change it to single shot. Okay, I'd love to demonstrate my point, but I don't think it's gonna work when the tracking. Okay. Now it's sort of listening to me, not quite. Alright, so I want to bring that closer and talk about something I just noticed, and it's related to the overlap, I bet. So, yeah, not exactly the greatest. Again, virtual stock disabled, about 40 meters away. But when I was aiming like this, most of you probably noticed you close like your left or your right eye, whatever's your dominant eye, to aim like this. And that's because, at least for me, what I've noticed from talking to some people is I kind of get like a little bit of a double vision thing when holding my gun close like this, because, you know, I think related stereo overlap, since if you hold it braced towards your shoulder and not like dead center, you're kind of favoring one side. But the thing is, with the enormous overlap that this headset has, when I hold it like this, kind of braced against my right shoulder, even with both eyes fully open, I feel like I can focus perfectly fine on where it's supposed to be. Like here, let's do like just a close range shot kind of prove my point. Cause like, yeah, that's about where I'm aiming. Like it's a tiny bit lower, but that's pretty much where I'm aiming. So that's actually really cool for shooters. Alright, so this is something I got recently. It is a new gun stock. I'm gonna be doing a review on it at some point, but I've been playing around with it, and I want to see just how, if it can help my aiming at all here. If I can keep my hands kind of stay. Oh yeah, that's actually better. So maybe it was my unsteady hands? I mean, they're still a little bit jitter, but like, yeah, that's actually not so bad. And feels a lot better to shoot with. Although I still do gotta control the recoil a little, and I'm having some issues with it going a little bit off balance. But let me take a look at that. Because that seems like... Oh yeah! Yeah, because I was aiming like kind of around the X or so. That is really cool about the overlap, though. I don't feel like I need to close my eye when shooting anymore. Well, those are my first impressions. Couple things to talk about or elaborate on after some further testing, though. Again, disclaimer, this is just some of my first impressions after a few days, so I would not base your entire purchasing decision just on this. More in-depth looks will be coming. I also encourage everyone to check out multiple reviewers and opinions, given how individualized VR is. My priorities may not be your priorities. Anyway, this all said, so firstly, to address that kind of motion persistence even blur that I saw during head movements like this in Kayak, I just couldn't replicate it anywhere else, even with stuff like the desktop and text here right now where I'm reading my script. So I really don't know what was going on there, but I'm leaving it in just in case if someone else gets a unit and experiences it or wants to test it. Now, going to comfort, I was pretty impressed with this, having done 2-hour sessions with a couple different configurations. From stock to just the top strap here, and then throwing on some comfort accessories like I'm wearing right now. Comfort accessories definitely do improve things. I'm going to use them since I have them, but stock, the only thing I'd say is really needed would be a better facial interface. Balance-wise, sits pretty well, and it's a good bit better than the OG Crystal for longer sessions, though Pimax headsets have historically fit my head shape very well, full disclaimer on that, since comfort can be very subjective. If you're coming from the original Crystal or the Lite, though, any comfort accessories you have for that should fit on the Super just fine. Now, in some of the games I checked out, and you saw the performance metrics, even the 5090 was taking a hell of a beating. So, because there's a lot of games where we are going to have to use upscaling or lower the resolution, I did some testing with this at medium resolution, comparable to the Crystal's high on raw numbers. Now, I'm gonna need some more time to do thorough testing and some side-by-sides, but compared to the original Crystal, even setting aside the brightness difference, at medium res, it still was a mild improvement. Not a gigantic difference at medium res versus the full fidelity this can provide, but still enough to appreciate that mild bump with the higher panel res. Although part of it may also be the fact that we have a lot better lenses, too. Especially coupled with all the other things like the much wider FoV, the higher brightness. Those are just amazing. The ones on this are so much better about mitigating factors like chromatic aberration, which does still appear in some contexts, but it's far more controlled in a decent chunk of the time. I barely ever saw it. At full fidelity, this thing is definitely far better than the Crystal in terms of sharpness. It's definitely held back somewhat by the fact that the games just cannot keep up with this kind of fidelity, and we're not made with it in mind. Oh, yeah, Broken Eye also works on the Super and VRChat flawlessly, so that's neat for social VR players. But even if I think the Super does a lot great, there are still a couple issues. Some of them are small, some of them large. Firstly, let's talk about the Miura again, since I did mention it in my other impressions. At least on this unit, while it was present, it mainly seems the most obvious on white and grayish things, such as looking up at a bright sky or in the Steam VR Void with the UI up like I have right now. It's a complete world apart from how horrendous the PSVR 2 had it. That just ruined everything I looked at. And it actually doesn't ruin dark scenes here either. Thank God. I actually was impressed by how little this had mirror during dark scenes. I think it's low enough that most people are not going to be too bothered by it unless you are particularly troubled by Mura or in the constant worst case scenarios like, I don't know, maybe flight simming or something up in the sky. But personally, in the kinds of stuff I play, I hardly ever saw it outside those situations I outlined. Didn't see tiger stripes or whatever it's called that some people report on the Vario XR4 with the same panel though. As a case in point about the Mura, why I have my script and everything and my OBS right here so I can see what I'm doing, I don't see it right now, so that's a good sign. Now, local dimming is largely really good in the places I tested it. If we compare it to the Crystal on the highest setting, although I do prefer slightly lowering it to fix the blooming at the cost of a little contrast, it's generally rationally ahead here, and coupled with the total lack of glare, it's just stellar since this almost entirely avoids the blooming their old algorithm had, or the black crush that the new one uses on the Crystal. With the Crystal, that thing where you're in a dark scene and like move your hand over something and where you can visibly see the brightness is changing in a bad and distracting way, that doesn't really happen here. But that weird bubble is something I really gotta test more for. It's not the same kind of white haze you'd see with the Crystal or even my Neo G9 monitor, and the normal blooming artifact. It was pretty rare and much better than the blooming on the Crystal ever was. But if I just happen to be mostly using it for best case scenarios where it's not going to show up and it's more common outside my usual testing, but I just so happen to mostly be in good situations, well, that's gonna be a bit of a problem. Brightening the gamma in the recordings where I talked about it, though, did show some stuff that indicates it might be partially the game where I was testing. The reason being that because physical panel limitations and blooming artifacts don't show up in recordings, so maybe it's a specific type of lighting causing the issues. I don't know. This stuff is going to need some more thorough investigation. That's what my full review is going to be for. And then there is the tracking, which I largely think is pretty good and perfectly fine for most games in respect to the controllers, but the occlusion from them, it's still a bit of a weak point, and I think the play space memory sucks. I almost always end up far under the floor and have to reset my floor height every time I take the headset off. It would actually be a deal breaker for me were it not so easily fixed with apps that only cost a few bucks at most, like FPS VR. Less said about the god-awful microphone on this thing, the better. But there is one more thing I'd like to address and get some community help for, and that concerns Pimax itself. And this is something I want to take a look at my full review given the company history. Now, a lot of us know Pimax has had some notable issues with QC and customer service, according to their reputation you see online, and the company has even acknowledged this more than once. But in the past several months, Pimax has made some specific, actionable statements to improve the support experience, and customers can point to those in both writing and video that, at least on paper, I do think go a bit above and beyond in some places versus the baseline I see from some others in this space. I will be including links in the description so where you can see those statements for yourself and judge, since we're getting actual action, like the in-writing improvements on warranty. I'd like to get the community's help in trying to gauge if Pimax is actually improving and following through on those promises. The big blog update announcing these was made back in mid-December, and Pimax had indicated it started taking a few small steps towards those plans even before then. Now, this does totally takes time, and I don't think it's reasonable to expect all of the issues to get fixed right away in just a few months, but the key thing I'm looking for is improvement to show that they are committed to it. So if you've had a customer service experience with Pimax, positive or negative, since the beginning of 2025, I'd like to hear it down in the comments below. Now, QC-wise, Pimax has also promised some significant improvements on quality control, but this is a new product launch, and so few people have gotten it, it's hard to really make a good judgment there. And plus, I'm media, so I can't really comment on it. So if you're hesitant because of that or on the fence at all, just just wait. The Super is not going anywhere, and there'll be more in-depth coverage coming from me and other people, or regular people getting it to help judge on things like the QC and the customer service. I am personally having a fantastic time with mine, though, so I'm not going to say don't buy it if you are already absolutely dead set on it, and like I'm just validating everything you wanted to hear. If you already own the Crystal or the Lite, and you deeply love it and know what to expect with Pimax and general kind of experience with these headsets or the visuals, yeah, this is a huge upgrade on like literally everything but the microphone. So, I mean, go for it then. I'll have a link in the description with a slight discount if you are one of those people. But everyone else, even if you're on the fence just a little bit and you haven't used the Pimax's headsets before, there's plenty more coverage on the way, and just, wait and see what some other people are going to say. No matter how much you trust me, I should not be the only source of information and reviews or opinions on VR hardware. In the meantime, I'm thinking I'm going to do a comprehensive benchmarking video with this in the 5090 before my full review, since not as many people doing that, and I think the community will get a little more value out of performance metrics. And there is the video. So, thank you for making it to the end. What'd you think hearing some of the thoughts on the Crystal Super? I'm pleasantly surprised overall how stable and nice this is after how some of Pimax's past launches have gone. But yeah, we'll just have to see how things go. If you made it to the end, thanks for sticking around. Consider, subscribing to see what I do next. And if not, maybe I'll see you again in the recommended sometime. Later!